Let's start with a story that became quite popular on Reddit under the Today I Fucked Up subreddit, a place where people share their everyday mishaps. This one revolves around something very simple but quickly escalated into an unexpected and somewhat hilarious series of events. It's the story of a man, let's call him Ben, who borrowed a kitchen knife from his neighbor, which led to a misunderstanding that could have come straight out of a sitcom. The setup, the knife borrowing. So, Ben lived in a small apartment building where most of the neighbors knew each other, but they weren't exactly close friends. One day, Ben realized he needed a good kitchen knife to prepare dinner. Now, Ben's cooking skills were decent, but his knives were old and dull, not suitable for the steak he planned to make. In a moment of spontaneity, he decided to knock on his neighbor's door. The neighbor, a friendly guy named Dave, happily lent Ben one of his sharpest knives. It was a really nice one, too, the kind that people who are serious about cooking would invest in. "Just make sure you bring it back when you're done," Dave said. Ben nodded, promising to return it later that evening. Things take a turn, the forgetting. Dinner went well, and Ben had his perfectly sliced steak. But once he finished eating, he was feeling pretty tired and relaxed, so he decided to watch some TV before heading to bed. As you can guess, the knife completely slipped his mind. The next day came and went, and Ben realized mid-afternoon that he still hadn't returned the knife. Feeling a little embarrassed, he went to knock on Dave's door, but no one answered. Thinking maybe his neighbor was out for the day, Ben figured he'd just return it later. Later turned into days later. Before Ben knew it, an entire week had passed, and by now he was mortified. Every time he saw Dave in passing, he would get that weird, guilty feeling and try to avoid eye contact. Dave didn't say anything, but Ben felt like the longer he held on to the knife, the weirder it became. And now it felt almost awkward to return it. The situation escalates. Dave gets suspicious. But here's where things take an unexpected twist. Dave eventually came by to ask about the knife, but he didn't ask it in a casual, friendly way. Instead, Dave looked kind of tense. "Hey Ben, do you still have my knife?" Dave asked, and his tone was just a little off. Ben, of course, immediately apologized and explained how he had simply forgotten to return it. He hurriedly ran inside and brought it back, profusely apologizing again for keeping it so long. Dave took the knife, looked at Ben for a moment, and then casually said, "Yeah, it's just weird. I don't know if you know this, but I noticed something strange the other day. I saw you late at night, just standing by your window, holding the knife." Now, Ben was confused. What was Dave talking about? The punchline. The mix-up. Dave continued, "I didn't want to bring it up because it was probably nothing, but I saw you standing by the window holding the knife and staring out into the street. It freaked me out." Suddenly, everything clicked for Ben. It wasn't him. Ben realized that what Dave saw was actually his reflection. You see, Ben's apartment faced Dave's, and at night, the lights from Dave's place must have reflected in such a way that Dave could see what looked like a person holding a knife. But in reality, it was Dave's own reflection. Ben burst out laughing when he realized what had happened, but it took a bit to convince Dave that he wasn't some kind of weirdo plotting a murder. In the end, they both had a good laugh, but it goes to show how something as simple as borrowing a knife can lead to a totally bizarre misunderstanding. Conclusion. Reflection on the story. This story became pretty popular on Reddit